He is a retired state trooper that got involved investigating crimes against children, including online sexual molesters and suspects that a lot of you wouldn't suspect that wanted to drug children. He's here to talk about that and his life after on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, their realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. If you're on the Clubhouse drop-in audio chat app, be sure to look for me and follow me. My name's John, the letter J, Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y. You can also search for at LET Radio Show. That's John J. Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y, at LET Radio Show on the Clubhouse drop-in audio chat app. Calling us from California, we have Carlos Rodriguez on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. He is retired from the Washington State Police. See, he's a retired Washington State trooper. During his career, which he'll talk about in a few moments, he got involved in investigating crimes against children, which we'll talk about. He also wrote the book, The Ugly Underneath. The website is theuglyunderneath.com. Carlos, A, thanks for your service, and B, thanks for agreeing to talk about this on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
By the way, and police work is, and I hate to say this, but one of the things that still bothers me is crimes against children. And that's not a field that most people want to get into, and they don't volunteer for that. It's quite often I find that people like myself have a big aversion to these crimes against children, and especially from so-called loved ones. I just don't understand it to this day.
Yeah, you know, and when I first got into this work, I didn't even know that the Washington State Patrol even investigated these types of cases.
And what I had a former coworker on from Baltimore Police Department, and he's retired. He worked, and I can't remember, the ICAC or something from the Maryland State Police involving internet crimes against children.
Yeah, and that's what the work I did. It was with the Missing and Exploited Children's Task Force, and we were an affiliate of ICAC, which was the Internet Crimes Against Children.
How did you get into that? Is that something you wanted to do?
No, well, what had happened is I had just left. I was working the road, and I was trying to get into work with our Fusion Center, where they handle data and intel for Washington State. And that position got filled because I was trying to get back to work with a supervisor who I'd worked with for a while. And he said, "Hey, have you heard of this task force? I think you should check it out. I think you'd be really good there." So I went and cross-trained there, and I learned that they worked crimes against children and investigated people who were trading these horrific images of horrible things happening to kids. And I went to a warrant. I watched how they did everything. And once I realized what was going on and how prolific it was, I thought, how can I not be doing this?
I get
so
that
it struck
part.
me a little bit differently.
I get that part, but here's the thing: is like, and I don't get disturbed. There's an overused term, like they're haunted by memories, and the things that really bother me the most that are crimes against children, crimes of violence, sexual violence, doesn't matter what it is, and crimes against elderly. Those are ones that come to mind first and foremost, and they usually show up when I don't want them to.
Yes. I think for me, and it took me a while to figure it out. I didn't know why that I was able to do the work. And so it used to actually make me angry when other people would tell me, "Hey, thanks for what you do." You know, I couldn't do that. I've got kids. And I would think, well, I've got kids. I do that. You're a cop. You should be doing this. You should be helping people. And it took me a while to realize that not everybody has the capacity to work these types of cases. Just like I can't go play basketball in the NBA. I can't build a rocket. I can't fly a jet. And it's the same kind of thing. And I realized that through life, there were certain things that helped prepare me to be able to do these types of things. Just I had compartmentalized things all throughout my life, which I think we all do. but I had certain things where I just became really good at that. And then when I worked these cases, that's what I applied. And you're right. Over time, like the images, there are images in my head that I still can't get rid of, no matter how hard I try. But I'll say when I was doing the work, I didn't realize how much it had affected me. But it does affect you. And I think if you're out there doing this type of work, you don't really realize how much it affects you until you're not doing it anymore. And then because you don't have the need to compartmentalize things quite the same way. And you also usually you don't have the same support structure, the same people that are in it. So it starts to, you start to see what type of toll that it took on you.
And one of the things, and by the way, there's a couple buzzwords in the law enforcement industry. Compartmentalize is one of them that I hear all the time, and you become very good at that after a while. The other one I hear is resilience and mental health, all that stuff. And I'll be honest with you, Carlos, I think that a lot of it is just a lot of talk of window dressing when it comes to agencies and departments. They really don't seem to care too much about the welfare of their people.
Yeah, I'll say when I first got to the task force, there was a wellness program that was new. It really wasn't implemented. As we went there, I ended up going to some training. It's called shift training. It's provided by the Innocent Justice Foundation, and it's provided to law enforcement that do this type of work. I'm very glad that I went to that because it really helped me, and it helped me put some safeguards in place for my people, for my detectives and myself. I'll say I didn't always follow them myself because I think I took better care of my detectives than I did of myself. So that is helpful. But, the thing where you talk about, sometimes it's just window dressing, you're absolutely right. When I go around across the nation and I meet law enforcement officers everywhere, you see people that are afraid to speak up about how things may be affecting them because they're afraid they're going to lose their position. Or they feel that they're damaged or broken. In my department, we didn't use the psychologist that we had for the department. We ended up getting a contract with someone who used to work these types of crimes, and I was very fortunate that our administration got it. As much as they could because they didn't work the cases, but they supported us and they allowed us to have that person on contract who used to work the cases and then now had retired and was provided therapy. And so if anybody needed to go speak to her, they would just go and there were no questions asked. The bill would just come in. It wouldn't say who it was unless there was something that needed to be brought to the department's attention for the safety of that officer. But I'll say I don't think we did that enough. I think it should be mandatory more often. It was once a year, and then people can go whenever they wanted, but really that wasn't enough. I would go at first because I was the boss, and I wanted to show that, hey, I'm going. It's okay.
Yeah, look at me. I'm okay. Nothing bad's happening.
Yeah, but I didn't go enough. And then when I did go, it did help. It helped a ton. So I think that's extremely important. And just if you're a supervisor out there, when you say, hey, whatever you need, we'll get it for you. If you say that, back it up. And what your people need, they need resources and they need your support. They
One
don't
of the
just
things
need, pat on the back.
That I get periodically, I'm sure you get too, is meet so-and-so, my niece, my nephew, my son, my daughter, whatever it might be. They want to be a police officer. What advice would you give them? And the first thing I tell them is, you go every year and you see a dentist for routine checkups. You go every year, you get a physical. Get yourself a trauma-informed therapist and start. Get started. Be proactive about it before bad things happen because you're going to get dinged up. It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
Yes, it does. And then
don't
surround
wait
yourself with people.
And don't wait for the department to order you to go because by then it's not good being on that radar. We're talking with Carlos Rodriguez. He's retired from the Washington State Police. He spent many years, which we'll talk about in a few moments, investigating crimes against children, and we'll talk about some of those in a moment. He's the author of the book, The Ugly Underneath, and his website is theuglyunderneath.com. That's theuglyunderneath.com. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Get access to free podcast versions of the show and more on Facebook. Do a search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, and be sure to click like. Contacts from the great state of California. We have Carlos Rodriguez on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Carlos is retired from the Washington State Police. And yeah, I know he's living in California now. He's a West Coast guy. During his career, he investigated crimes against children, including a lot of sexual crimes, which we'll talk about in a few moments. He's the author of the book, The Ugly Underneath, and his website is theuglyunderneath.com. That's theuglyunderneath.com. Carlos, before we went to break, we started leading into some of your story. How long did you investigate crimes against children?
I investigated crimes against children for approximately 8 years, towards the end of my career.
That's a long time. And by the way, in Baltimore, I'm sure it's similar to the State Patrol in Washington State. You've got to do your time on the street, and that involves weekends, holidays, rotating shift work, all that stuff. And I can understand wanting to get out and reach for anything. Is that what prompted you to do this?
No, I had the opportunity to go cross-train with the task force I went to, and once I saw what they did, I thought I need to do this, and then I joined the task force there.
When we were kids, I'm much younger. I'm older than you are, but when we were kids, we were constantly given the talk about the stranger in the van, and he's offering you candy, and look for his kitten, and all that stuff. Beware, they're predators. Now it seems like a lot of that action happens online. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. A lot of it does happen online, and there are still people out there. Most of these cases aren't some creepy guy in a park or in a van, that gets overly sensationalized. And then oftentimes I've seen kids, if a creepy person comes up to them or looks at them at the playground, they're not stupid. They usually figure out, hey, this guy's weird. The ones you got to worry about are familial, people known to the family, right, and then online, where they start to get kids to relax and think that they know them. And
with most crimes of violence, one of the things that my wife, and I met her years at her time from police work, is stranger on stranger crime is very rare. It doesn't happen very often. In crimes of violence, it's not the boogeyman down the street you got to worry about. It's the person that lives with you.
Yes, and when I first started working these cases, I had to change how I talk to my kids. Because it used to be, hey, if somebody did this to you, they're never going to find them, right? You'd have that's, I think, the knee-jerk reaction that most people say. And then when I started working these cases and I started to see that most of the time it was someone known to the child, I thought, I need to change that phrase, because if something happens to my own kid,
right, I
don't want them to protect whoever it is, and then just have that conversation with them that it's never their fault. It's never their fault. They didn't have a say that no matter how guilty they feel or they think they're going to get in trouble, they're not going to get in trouble, and that they can trust me. And to be able to have that conversation with them, because that's one of the number one ways to prevent some of these things happening. It's not some app you put on your phone, which can help, but it's really having the ability to have a conversation with your kids. That's number one.
I think that it goes a long way. And part of it is, Carlos, and I want to know if this is familiar territory with you, is I didn't want my kids to have to worry about me. I didn't want them to be thrust in adult roles when they were little. Of course, they're in their 30s now. But we had frank conversations, and what is Dad going to do to this guy? I didn't want them to be concerned about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even when I was in law enforcement, I didn't really talk about what I did around my kids, just in an effort to protect them from the things that I saw, whether it be when I was working crimes against children or when I worked narcotics and I did those different things. And my kids didn't really, my son, he didn't even know I was a police officer, because I think the last time I'd worn a uniform, he was just a baby, and he didn't really see me in a uniform until unfortunately I had to go to a funeral for one of my friends. And then he realized, oh, my dad's a cop.
I can imagine that conversation. Holy cow, Dad is the police.
Yeah, it was really sad. I remember when he saw me with the uniform, I picked him up, and he grabbed my badge, and then he says, "I want you to take this off." And I thought, no, I gotta leave that on, bub. And he's like, "No, I want you to take the police suit off." And he told me it's because if I wear the police suit, then the bad guys are going to kill me. They'll know I'm the cops and they'll kill me. If I don't have it on, they won't know. And so at that point, I was like, okay, we need to have a talk with both my kids.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
So they know I'm going to be okay, best I can. And I did the best I could. I mean, you can't ever tell what's going to happen. You do the best to protect yourself and your team, but you really don't know. I'm very fortunate that
I need to really be aware of, and I'm very aware of now, the shoulda, coulda, woulda. So I did the best I could. I worked narcotics for a long time, and the hair grows, the beard grows, all that stuff grows, the clothing's different. And before I got promoted to sergeant, they put me back in patrol in a uniform car, and I was like, what a relief this is. People, you got a target on your back, but they know exactly who they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Did you feel that when your time in uniform was a little bit different than all the responsibilities were the same? Was a little bit different or a little bit more of a relief for you?
I'll say, I didn't quite look at it that way. I think when I worked narcotics, people would always ask me, hey, I don't know if I could do this because we were trying to recruit someone into our task force. And he's like, I don't know if I could do this because we just did this did a buy walk. And he's like, I shop at this grocery store. What if I were to run into someone? And I told him, I said, well, think of it this way. If you're in uniform and you run into somebody and you're in plain clothes, they're going to know that you're alone.
Right.
But if you run into them and they recognize you, they're going to look around and say, "Where's this guy's team?"
Right.
And so then maybe it gives you an opportunity to do something. And then with those instances, I don't know if it ever happened to you, but I ran into I think there's been 3 different times where I ran into someone that I had investigated, and one guy had gone to prison, and this time I was with my kid. But we had a plan as to what we would do, and we got to implement the plan. I think he was like 8. And the plan was, depending on what happened, on the severity of it. But with this one, I could just say, "Hey, bub, it's time for you to go stand over there." That was the code. And he was, to my surprise, he was super surprised. I mean, super excited that he was like, "It's right now, it's happening." So he ran to the end of the aisle and posted up. And then I had the conversation with the guy, and then nothing happened. I mean, the guy actually. He was on contract. He was a CI on contract, and he didn't live up to his end, so he ended up going to prison. And then he had gotten out, and he actually thanked me because he said he messed up, on his part, which surprised me. I wasn't expecting
That's
that.
pretty rare, but it does happen.
Yeah.
The closest I came to that was I was working with the DEA, and I came home early one day for whatever reason. I was in a truly undercover car. I was in a Pontiac Firebird, Formula 400, and there were 2 guys who were targets of our investigation and on our front porch. And they were like, their cover story was, we're looking for apartments to rent. Nothing's for rent in our house. I knew they were looking for me. So I called the uniformed troops. They came, they took care of business, and they interviewed them, and they left because there was nothing you could do. It's a free country. You could walk on front porches. We're talking with Carlos Rodriguez. He's retired from the Washington State Police. During his career, which we'll talk about in a few moments, he got involved for many years investigating crimes against children. He's also author of the book, The Ugly Underneath, and his website is theuglyunderneath.com. That's theuglyunderneath.com. Don't go anywhere. I promise you, you don't want to miss what's coming your way. We'll be right back.
Someone asked, what's the catch? What's the cost? There is no cost for anything on the Law Enforcement Talk radio show and podcast website, letradio.com. letradio.com. Again, that's letradio.com.
Current conversation with Carlos Rodriguez on the Law Enforcement Talk radio show. Carlos is retired from the Washington State Police, and he is contacted us from California. He is author of the book, The Ugly Underneath, and his website is theuglyunderneath.com. That's theuglyunderneath.com. He spent many years investigating crimes against children. Before we get into this, one of the things that I rarely watch police videos, and these undercover videos, the name that comes to mind the most often is Chris Hansen. And when he does To Catch a Predator and all this stuff, I'm like, look, It's one thing to be in a room interviewing someone that's a suspect. I know the rules of engagement. I know to keep my hands to myself, all that stuff. And I know I got to be nice. But I don't know that I could do that sort of stuff. Did you wind up getting involved with catching these, and I'm air quoting, predators?
Yes, I did. We actually ran, we called them demand ops, and we focused on people who are interested in having sex with kids ages 13 and younger. So I would run these undercover ops where we'd go into different cities around Washington State, and we'd post up there for about a week at a time, either in a house or apartments, and we'd have a command post, a place where the individual would go if they wanted to have sex with the kid, and then we'd go from there. So we'd chat with them undercover online, and we had received training through ICAC to do that, to make sure that we did everything the right way, because we knew we were going to, before we did these, that we may be challenged in court, which we were.
Sure.
So we wanted to make sure we were doing everything the right way so that person would be held accountable.
How prevalent is this with sexual advances for people seeking sex with children online?
Oh, I wish I could tell you that it wasn't prevalent, but it's overwhelmingly a problem. I mean, it's an epidemic. It's as easy as ordering a DoorDash or going to the store and buying something, unfortunately. And it's not just on the dark net. It's out there on different social sites where people want to interact. That's where it's happening.
And part of this is, look, I think, and I had to learn to adjust, and I'm sure you did too, but I think like a normal person. I don't think like a criminal. And what really helped me was, if I was a murderer, what would I do? Where would I go next? If I was this, what would I do? The problem is a lot of these people, it's totally foreign that they would even do this.
Yeah, well, when I first did our first operation, I thought we were going to fail. I thought no one was going to show up. And within 10 minutes of me posting our first ad, we had hundreds of responses before it was flagged and removed. And so, and I thought, well, here we go. And then we ended up as we did each operation, we got better and we got more people who were trained to help us. Because my task force was small. I had 2 people, sometimes just one other detective and myself. And our area of responsibility was the entire state to help other people when they needed help and they didn't have our level of expertise. So we would travel around, and as we started to get better at this and just more more organized, we would average about 7 arrests a night for someone seeking sex with 13 and younger. And we could do more, but when you run those types of operations, you have to look out for your people. And fatigue is really big, because if your people are tired, they start to make little mistakes. It could be in a report.
Right.
It could be maybe they don't type something correctly. It could be your use of force could go up. So there are a lot of things you want to do everything the right way, and then to protect your people and to protect the case and then those you're doing this type of work for. So we would limit it to a certain time, but then if we had a target who still wanted to show up, we would just identify a small team, and then we would handle that. And that's how we would do it. We would just keep working it. And I said earlier that we would do these about a week at a time. If we were still communicating with someone that still wanted to do things outside of that week, we absolutely dedicated resources to it. But we would try to do these a week at a time, because then we can bring all of these resources together. My little small team of 1 to 2 detectives plus myself became 60 or 70 people that were subject matter experts that could all had the same mission. And then we got to do a lot of good in a short period of time. All the casework was done by the end of that time for the prosecutor in whatever area we went. And then it also minimized, yes, we had some overtime, but it minimized if you're just doing a 1-off or a 2-off, you could have overtime and then not even get anybody because they switched to a different date. So this time we could do that, and if they canceled one date, maybe they want to do counter surveillance to see if they're going to get busted, and then nothing happens, and then they show up. They go, oh yeah, okay, well yeah, I'm ready now. So we were able to do that.
One thing that and a lot about this amazes me, and I don't think I'm easily shocked. After years of police work, nothing really surprises me. But when you said up to 7 a night arrests, that is shocking.
It is, and as I did this work over and over, I had to remind myself that not everyone is bad in the world, because you live in it and you see it so much, and then you're pretending to be a parent that's offering their kids for sex. You're pretending to be someone who has control of a kid, or you're pretending to be someone who's run away from a bad situation and is trying to do survival sex. There's all these different scenarios that we based all of those off of actual cases that we've worked. So we weren't making this stuff up. You would think that this is made up, but it's not. These are actual, this happens. So we're not basing it on fiction. This is real. But you have to start to remember, you have to remind yourself that not everyone out there is like this. And then also when you're off of work and you're going and you're interacting with your friends and other people, you have to remind yourself to sanitize things, because you just become so used to that world.
Oh,
so you
trust me, I'm not the guy you want to talk to at a barbecue about bad stuff.
Yeah.
Because I remember looks on some people's faces, they're really curious until you start telling them, they're like, oh, wait, stop. I don't want to hear it anymore. Stop.
Yes.
And with you out of work,
when I went to...
I really think that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I'll say when I did that work, I'd try to, because everyone wants to talk about what you do when you're a cop and you do stuff like that and undercover work. And I would have to sanitize it. And even when I sanitize it, it was still, I don't think, enough, because it's just hard. All this stuff is just so ugly, and it's just hard to hear. But the other thing I found myself as I started to do is I started to, when I would shut things down so I could cope to do the work, I found whenever I went to social functions, I really didn't want to be around anybody, because I didn't want to talk about it. And I wanted to just, go off into a corner, do our time, get our food, and then get out of there and go home and just do something else to decompress. So, because everyone wants to talk about what you're doing, and I really didn't want to talk about it.
No, I get that. And there's two questions I have for you. One is, listen, I imagine there is a significant other that gave you an elbow in the ribs when you were talking too much.
Yeah, and I'll say she was really good. She was great. And, part of doing this work is if you don't, and that's one of the things that go in the book, if you don't talk about this and you don't take breaks and you don't take care of yourself, it ends up affecting you, and it affects your family. Because, imagine if you're married to somebody and you just want to spend time with them, you want to talk about their day when they get home and things like that, and you're always leaving to go help some stranger. And, of course, it's a great cause. You have to do that. But if you don't build in those times, or that time before you go home. So something what we would do is, and I wasn't the best at it, but I had my people do it, is we had to review something that was horrible to look at. They had to do something totally different for 2 hours before they could go home, and to get right in their head. And sometimes it meant, going and grabbing and parking in the parking lot and doing something totally different. So that when you get home, you're there for your family, because they love you and they just want to be around you.
They just want you
when
to
you go home,
be...
how often do you get the 15 minutes you have?
Right. We're going to take a short break on that note. We're talking with Carlos Rodriguez. He is retired Washington State trooper, got involved in investigating crimes against children there for 8 years, including a lot of sex crimes. We'll return to that conversation in a few moments. Give you a hint. Who is the most usual suspect? It's not often who you think. He's author of the book, The Ugly Underneath, and his website is theuglyunderneath.com. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
How would you like a free ebook on tips to improve your health? We're talking about tips you can use for free to add years to your life. Best of all, the ebook is free to download at lethealthy.com. When we say free, we mean free. So you can download the free ebook to improve your physical health, all while preserving your financial health. Get the ebook for free today at lethealthy.com. That's at lethealthy.com. Again, the website is lethealthy.com.
Current conversation with Carlos Rodriguez on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Carlos is retired from the Washington State Police, and he did investigating crimes against children for about 8 years. We'll return to that conversation in a few moments. That included a lot of sex crimes. which we will talk about. He's author of the book, The Ugly Underneath, and his website is theuglyunderneath.com. That's theuglyunderneath.com. First of all, I can think about a lot of police work. And by the way, there was a shooting in Baltimore where a police officer was shot in the leg and survived, thank God, at a tourniquet. And the SWAT team sniper wound up killing the guy. It was right in the area where I used to work. And it brought back a lot of memories and a lot of things that you said earlier in the conversation. I compartmentalized. I don't want that side of Jay to come out, but he's still there. He's still part of me. And other than being a patrol officer and encountering crimes against children, usually physical abuse, some sexual abuse, it was usually by loved ones. Those things can come to the surface quickly. And it's usually when I don't want. And it's usually when I'm not, you said a good point. You go do something for a couple hours afterwards. It's usually when I'm tired, emotional, or I haven't eaten. That's usually when they tend to show up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's, when you do the work so long and you're in there and you've turned off, you literally start to turn off your emotions. And then I like to say it's kind of like when something doesn't work in your house, an outlet, and you start flipping off the breaker switches. It's kind of like that, and then you eventually turn off the master breaker. It's just when you turn it back on, they don't always work.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing. At least that's what I experienced. But yeah, it's like almost your homeostasis changes, where you're just you're just high, go, and then down and go. It just starts to lower, and you start to change, and you got to make yourself go do things. So then you're not always in that valley.
Sometimes I like to think of myself as being cured of all this, and that there was another guy another lifetime ago, and all of a sudden, it's right back there with you. Did you ever feel like that was another part of your life, or that was a different guy?
Yeah, I'll say when it really started to know that how I was to where I am now, it was when I quit doing the work, when I got switched to another assignment and then retired. And then when I moved down to San Diego, where I currently live now, and I didn't have the same support structure, I'd see little things or I'd hear something, and I'd just have a flood of emotion that would come back. And that's when I was like, hey, maybe I should see someone about this, because I haven't seen anyone in a while. And that's when I started to write. And it was really more of a therapeutic journey.
I was going to ask you that. And by the way, I did an interview probably about 6 months ago with a guy who's retired San Diego County police detective or San Diego County Sheriff's detective, and he specialized in crimes against children. He was in the longest prolonged shootout with a pedophile and in San Diego history. And I believe he's lost most use of one of his arms as a result of that. But it's a fascinating story. One of the things that, and before we go into your book, I've got to ask this question. Earlier, we in Hollywood, I blame Hollywood for this, we have a stereotype about who the predator is. It's not often the case, is it?
No, it isn't. I mean, most people think it's, like we said, the creepy guy, or it's some insidious person, or it's a male. But I like an example, I had a case where it was a young female. She was in her early 20s, and she was a mother, a sister. She was a nurse's assistant. So you would never think that she was someone that was trying to traffic a kid, and then trying to do, I won't go into all the details, but seeking to do horrible things with two little girls.
It's amazing. Did that shock you when that suspect came, when you found out who they were?
At that point in my career, no. Because I had already had instances where I had seen things where, I've had judges, firemen, other women, because you don't usually see women,
right?
Teachers, former police officers. So, I mean, you just see the gambit. And that's where, I go back to, I have to remind myself, not everyone is like this.
No, and most people aren't.
When I was a cop, when I was a cop, I used to off so much, because no matter where you are in the nation, whatever uniform you wear, the society in our community sees us as all the same.
Yep.
And they entrust us with we're supposed to take care of them, right? And when somebody screws up, that affects us all, everyone across the board.
Well, I'll just say this: we used to get punished for stuff that L.A. did, in Baltimore. And we're like, well, look, no, it's the other side of the country. I wasn't involved in that.
Right.
Why? And it's because, and this is the one thing that I would say, we were in Baltimore, we were same uniform. We had what we could wear certain times of day, certain times of season, all that stuff. A lot of people had mustaches, and we all looked similar, but we were all different. And I still, to this day, when I see police that get caught up in these crimes against children, I am shocked and I am devastated.
Yeah, it hurts.
It's not supposed to be the case. I've never known anyone like that, and to be honest with you, I've never known anybody that was into excessive force or corruption. That we didn't tolerate that stuff.
Yeah, well, you can't. When you sign on for this job, you live in a glass house, and if you don't like that, then this is not the profession for you. You need to go do something else.
One of the things I always say this is, and I'm sure you'll get this, is like. And I see this all the time, especially on social media. On our Facebook page, we get it all the time. Oh, yeah, police are investigating their own. They're never going to find them guilty. Listen, we are not going to cover for someone and lose our health insurance for our family. We're not doing it.
No, it's more about the mission than it is the single person. And then if you buy into that, you're screwing up the whole system. I never thought I'd be a cop. I did it because there was a member of our family that was killed by a DUI, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to be a cop. I'm going to be state trooper because that's what do? They arrest DUIs. So that's why I joined this, and then it took me on this.
And now you
journey.
are an author. Tell us about your book.
So my book is called The Ugly Underneath. It's navigating the emotional toll of investigating crimes against children. It's a memoir of sorts. It goes into some of the things that helped prepare me to do the work of investigating crimes against children. And it goes into, there are some cases, but really it goes into how those things affected me and how I manage them, the good and the bad, so that if you are a law enforcement officer or you want to be a law enforcement officer and you're doing these cases, you can avoid some of the pitfalls I made, and then you can improve upon my successes. And then if you're not in law enforcement, it really gives you some insight into those that are doing the work and hopefully garners some support for them because they need your help. And it's this problem is just overwhelming and it can consume you. So they really need your help. There needs to be more people doing the work so that we can help protect your children.
Can people get more information about the book and contact you on your website, theuglyunderneath.com?
Yes, and I'm also, if they want to reach out to me on TikTok or Instagram, it's C_Rodriguez, Guez, is how you spell Rodriguez. So C_Rodriguez 198 is the tag.
Awesome. And I got a quick question for you. The number one thing, you're a father, I'm a father, as my daughters are in their 30s now, but what's the number one piece of advice you give to parents or grandparents, uncles, aunts about protecting their children?
Number one is make sure you have a good relationship with your kid or those children. And because if they don't trust you, if they don't trust to come forward when something happens, because no matter what safeguards you put in place, something could still happen. So make sure you build the trust so that they know they can come to you with anything. And then besides that, be vigilant. Get to know if they're going to go stay at a kid's house, the parents need to know, they need to know you. You need to know them. And just don't feel weird about it. And then explain things to your kids about if you're restricting them from something, why you're doing it. Just have that conversation. They may not like it, but they'll thank you later if they realize why you're doing it.
Well, my job as a parent is to prepare them for adulthood, and we'll make sure they're safe. Carlos, thanks for your service, and thanks for being a guest on Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, telling us all about it. Both very much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.